This is the farmhouse where I grew up, where my father grew up, where my grandfather grew up, where my great-grandfather grew up. The main house was built in 1860. We got electricity in 1943 with the Rural Electrification Act. And now what I am doing is I'm removing the majority of the 1960 updates and reverting the era back to somewhere between 1920 and 1950. I'm going to show you each room in the order that I did them years ago. While I am no more of a carpenter or a designer than any member of my family has ever been, I'm doing it to suit me and my tastes. In this episode, we're going to tackle the kitchen ceiling and the lights. As you can see, we're taking down the acoustic tiles and getting ready to put up planks of pine. With all the tiles gone and the nailers, we were back to the 1915 ceiling. Now, the reason why we couldn't use it is twofold. One, I'll show you in a bit that when they cut holes, they were not very good at it, and there was giant holes that we weren't going to be able to patch. And where the stove was put in years ago, there was another giant hole, and we can't reproduce that ceiling, so we decided we had to cover it. The other reason is, as a kid, I remember that we painted that ceiling, and we rolled across the beads so that the beads are full of paint instead of going lengthwise with the board. So even if we wanted to keep them, all of that paint would have to be scraped out, and it's just not worth it. And here you can see the big ugly looking hole that they cut in the middle of the ceiling for the only light that was in the kitchen. Initially we thought we'd put up a giant school light, but that didn't work out well because no matter how much light you put in the center of the room, it still has to go all the way around the room. Also, beside that school light, you'll see that there's another fixture that we had hanging. That was going to be a test for the light over the island. After we decided where the 4 lights were going to go, I'm setting on top of our island, wiring up the center junction box. We decided on the light for the over the island, and that was going to be an original porcelain gas station light. And if you notice, our school light has now been moved down towards the picture window, kind of equidistant, and that is where that one was going to reside. And eventually the light where the center light used to be is going to be gone. And here is another shot of the gas station light all wired up and ready to go, and then the other wires going to the big school light are just kind of hanging right there. And here we've got the school light wired up and in operation. However, because the ceiling is low, that mount for the ceiling light wasn't going to work. It was down too low. So we decided to use a modern bathroom fixture light, remove the globe, take the base, and put that up, and then attach the school light to that, and that would bring it closer to the ceiling so we would have clearance. And then it was time to start putting up the pine, the pre-finished pine ceiling. We moved everything out of the living room in the center, laid down all the boards to get them acclimated before we could put them up. And we thought at the time that was all the wood we were going to need. Little did we know. And here you see the first board put up next to the beam going into the kitchen annex. And then we started running into problems, and I was trying to fix them with a little caulk to hide the scratches and digs in the wood. Finally, I gave up, pulled what I had down, went through all the boards, and got enough to put it back up where you see it right there. But of course, we were way short on lumber for the rest of the ceiling, with the rest of it being bad. Now this picture shows the smaller base bringing the school light closer to the ceiling, and also the center of the room where the old light used to be. Those black boxes hanging down are X10 relays that will run the lights in the kitchen because we wanted 3 lights and controlled from multiple places, and you just could not run the actual wiring because of the way the house was designed, so we decided to do X10 relay switches. Well, the next batch of lumber came in, and we took back all the bad stuff, and we went through that, the second shipment, and as you can see, that didn't look much better than the first. The finish seemed to ball up to little tiny white BBs that you see on the one board, and then as the boards were moved back and forth against each other, that hard white BB scratched the hell out of the pre-finished pine. So that shipment of lumber went back, and the third shipment arrived, and as you can see, half of it wasn't acceptable. That's the stuff in the foreground. On the far right is the only acceptable stuff. So that shipment went back, and we got the fourth shipment. And as you can see, we not only had the scratches, but we had gouges. And if you notice the finish, it looks like they stopped in the middle of a board and then started in again, because the finish looks, there's a blob in the middle. So that's not acceptable. And we even had some boards with chunks missing. They were not taking good care of the lumber for shipment at all from the lumber mill to our dealer. But after 4 shipments, we were able to get enough decent lumber that we could finish the ceiling. And as you can see here, we are most of the way across the kitchen. And here, just a couple boards away from finishing finally. We started in May and we ended in October. So we were all summer dealing with this bad lumber and putting it up and taking it down 4 times. And here's right at the very end, I'm using a reverse clamp to hold the boards together because we were down to the end of the boards and some of them were not very straight. And you can see that I'm using my 16 gauge pass load gun to attach the boards to the ceiling. And with the ceiling finally done, we could turn our attention to getting all the lights installed. And next to the gas station light over the island, I designed and built a hanging kerosene lamp with dual 1.5-inch wicks. And here are the 4 electric and 1 kerosene lamp on our new ceiling, finally. And that is how we did the ceiling and the lights in the kitchen.